Hello everybody, this is PJ with Entegra Coach, Director of Motorized Technical Training. And we're going to take a quick look at our delivery process for our luxury products. This is going to include the Cornerstone, the Anthem, and the Aspire. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an opportunity to go through our delivery process and explain each of the items that we have on our delivery checklist. Hopefully you're seeing that from your dealership when you take delivery. If not, this is going to be a good way to learn more things about your coach and hopefully a refresher to help you understand how to operate your Entegra Coach. First, we're going to start right here at the entry door with the keyless entry. It is recommended that you will program your own access code here into the keyless entry. We're going to take a moment and show you how this keyless entry works. So by simply closing the door, and we always suggest that you do keep the key fob with you or the keys with you. We don't want to accidentally get locked out of the coach. But to lock the Entegra Coach, press and hold the 1. The door will lock. It will also disable the cargo doors and set the alarm at the same time. Our default code for access into the coach is simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And then press and release the 1, 2 button will unlock just the entry door. If you press that 5-digit access code and push the 2, that will unlock the entry door and enable the cargo doors. If you would do that code again and just press and release the 3, that will enable the cargo doors, so that enables the access to the cargo doors. The one thing we want to do is make sure that we are programming our own access code because it is a default code, and that will kind of be generic throughout all of the Entegra Coach product. So I want to take you through the process really quick of setting up your own access code. Simply press and hold the 3 button. It's going to beep and flash. It takes about 5 seconds. Now you will need to enter the 5-digit authority code. Now this is going to be pre-programmed from us. It is the number 4, 5 times. Once you put that in, you'll get a long sustained beep. Choose what channel you want. So I'm going to choose channel 1 because you can program up to 4. And then you will want to enter your 5-digit access code. I'm just going to go right back to the default. It beeps twice and then it's asking us to confirm that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Just do that process again. Now we have reset the access code, and that's how you would reset or program your own personal access code. All right, on the exterior freezer, access to the first cargo door here on the passenger side. The freezer is in a tray. It's going to pull out. The 2 clips here. You will have your controls right here on this side. It is going to be plugged into 12 volt. We are running the freezer on 12 volt. It's more efficient to run it on 12 volt. You can set these to separate temperatures, so you can have one set up as a freezer and one set up as a refrigerator. And all of that is going to be controlled right here. We do ship the 110 cable with it in case you wanted to take the freezer out and set it outside somewhere or put it in a garage or your storage facility, anything like that. But while it's in the coach, we want it to be running on 12 volt power. Number 1, it's going to run all the time when your main battery disconnect is on, and you're not going to have to worry about any inverted circuits. In the front cargo door on the passenger side, you're going to have the exterior freezer, and you will also have the equalizer leveling controls are going to be behind this access panel right here. So the leveling pump is what operates your hydraulic leveling system. If for any reason we would ever need to get back there, check the fluid. It is a closed system, so it doesn't happen very often. You would know that you would need to check the fluid if you had a spot underneath a jack leg somewhere, then we definitely want to get in here and check that fluid. The other thing is if you ever had to do an emergency retract situation, we've got all that documentation for you. Simply, there's some valves on here that you would open the valves up, and then we would run the motor manually with a screw gun. When we're done, all the jacks are all the way up, then we would close those valves back into the original position. But that is all going to be accessible behind this black panel. In between the first and second door on the passenger side, you will find that there is an air chuck mounted to the bottom of the frame rail. That air chuck is for towing purposes. You will want to know where that's at. Now you can be used for inflating bicycle tires or blow-ups or anything like that, but primarily that is designed for a towing situation. If you ever had to have this motorhome towed, the tow truck company would need to attach a supply line to this. The reason they're doing that is to keep the parking brake disengaged and also to keep the airbags aired up. They will know what to do if you will just show them where it's at. The towing company can run their air line through here, bring it into the door, pull the bulb seal, and they will just connect to that air fitting. That will allow this coach to be towed safely. The power cargo trays, located in the basement here, operated by the switch on the door. So this is just an in and out switch here. When we push the out, it'll run that cargo tray out. So it is a power tray going in and out. It has automatic stops on it so that it will not go past the door on the other side. You don't have to worry about if that door is closed over there, it won't go past it. The one thing that we need to really pay attention to is this warning label right here. It does have a weight limitation on it. That weight limitation for the power cargo tray is 1,000 pounds, and the key is evenly distributed. So what we don't want to see is a toolbox sitting on this side that's 600 or 700 pounds worth of tools and 4 lawn chairs on the other side. That will, over time, will cause the bearings to go out prematurely. We just want to make sure that we have that loaded evenly. Your exterior TV, entertainment center, push in on the button there. And the door lifts up. Several things that we have inside the entertainment center. Number one is the TV, obviously. But that is on a swivel and a tilt, so that will come out and also tilt down. The main sound source for the outside entertainment center are going to be these speakers. So the TV is wired to this radio right here. You would select the mode to be on the TV and it will display or have your audio from the TV through these speakers. The other thing this radio will do is it is connected to the dash radio. So if you were listening to Sirius radio, you could have that outside and listen to Sirius radio while you're outside. Several different things it has: Bluetooth, FM radio, and then it is obviously our primary source for the sound from the TV. All right, so we want to talk about the basement electrical components. That's going to be inside this door right here. When we open this door, you're going to see a series of battery disconnects. That's these guys right here. Those are true battery disconnects that will completely disconnect your coach from the house batteries, eliminating any parasitic draw. This controller right here is going to be for our solar panels. That is running all the time, so there is no disconnect to that. Anytime you have your coach sitting outside and the sun is out, you are going to be charging solar to your house batteries and then to your chassis batteries once the house batteries are full. The disconnect knob that is straight in on that inside wall there, it's actually on the side of the battery box, is for your inverters. So that would give you 12 volt power to the inverters. By turning that off, that disables your inverter and also prevents the coach from charging. So I want to show you inside this carpeted panel as well, there are several fuses and things that you will need to be aware of and different controls. We're just going to go through and show you what each one of those are. All right, so in this carpeted panel, this is just Velcroed on, so it's easy just to pull it away. And then I'm just going to try to turn it around here so we can get a look at it. This does have a label on the back side that will tell you what these controllers are. That is for the M1 system of your multiplex system. So when we're looking at this panel here, that's going to be this guy here. That's what the label is for, the M1 right here. You have a series of breakers. Those are all labeled. And then we have 2 fuse panels. Inside those will have the individual fuses, and they are labeled as well to what they are. So one thing that you may have to check once in a while are some fuses. These 2 solenoids here, 2 different things, just to give you what they are. This guy right here is going to be your battery isolator manager. So that's what connects your house batteries to your chassis batteries while you're driving down the road. That allows us to charge the house batteries from the engine alternator. This guy right here is the battery disconnect. So when you guys hit your main power switch at the entry door, this is the solenoid that is controlling. That provides battery power from the house batteries to all of the rest of the components that are 12 volt in your coach. The wet bay area here, the fresh water tank and the gravity fill, this is going to be your sight glass to be able to see how much water is in the fresh water tank. This is the gravity fill for the fresh water tank, so we can just simply put a hose on this and it will fill up your fresh water tank. You can watch it here. The one thing you want to remember about using the gravity fill is when you do use the gravity fill, it is not going through your filter. So you're putting unfiltered water into your fresh water tank unless you have a filter out at the hose. But do remember this, anytime you use your water pump to pull the water out of the tank, it is being put through the filter. So we are filtering that water once it comes out of the fresh water tank as well. All right, so our DEF tank right here for the diesel exhaust fluid, this is going to be the DEF tank. You can fill it up from here on certain models. Floor plans, we do have a driver's side DEF fill as well, so it all is based on the floor plan, whether or not we can put that on there. So this is where your main fill would be. The other thing we want to talk about inside this compartment is there's a small lanyard back here that is for your safe haul brakes, that's for your tow vehicle, any kind of braking system you can put on there that is air controlled. There is a separate tank back here. You will need to pull that lanyard and drain any moisture out of that tank. The other thing is this mana block back here. This is going to be for the valid air leveling system. So there's Schrader valves where you can attach a air line to, and again, this would be in a towing situation or an emergency air up situation where the valid system wasn't using the computerized system to air up the bags. We could manually air up any one of these suspension bags by going through these Schrader valves back here in this compartment. In the last compartment here on the passenger side is going to be your chassis batteries and also the chassis fuse box and a couple disconnects. So the two disconnects here, the top one here is for your engine that prevents your engine from starting. This bottom breaker here is what goes to our house battery. So that is the link between the house batteries and the chassis batteries. If this breaker is off, we're not going to charge the house batteries while we're driving down the road. On your chassis batteries, they are maintenance-free chassis batteries, so the thing we want to do is just make sure we keep the top cleaned off, keep those real nice and clean. They will get dust on them throughout time. This fuse panel here, pretty simple to get this off. About a 1/4 inch turn. It is labeled on the back side here, so you will have all of the fuses. The fuses that are going to be in there are primarily going to be things for your tow vehicle, the brakes, the marker lights, turn signals and all that for your tow vehicle, whether it's a trailer or you're towing your car. There are several breakers here. We just want to make sure that these things stay clean and wide open access. To access the engine door compartment, in this last door there is a switch here that says engine door open and close. Simply press that button there, and that should open our engine door. And once we get that open, we'll come around and tell you what all's in that engine compartment. Now that we have this open and accessible, just going to show you a few things that's in here. This guy right here in the center is our engine block heater. Now this is just the block heater that goes into the oil pan and into the block to warm the oil up. So this would be used in sub-zero temperatures. Rarely are you going to be using this. It is much more efficient to use the aqua hot engine preheat. So it's going to be rare that you use this guy here. The other things we want to be careful of and check every time we go to take a trip is going to be our air minder right over here. So this is our gauge for our air filter to make sure that's clear. This is our engine oil fill here. We want to check our coolant level. So this little eye right here needs to be full of fluid anytime we go to take off. And then our transmission dipstick. You can check the fluid here, but it's not going to be as accurate as it would be at the shifter pad. And so we're going to show you how to check your oil level and everything at the shifter pad inside when we talk about the inside things. So on the macerator system here, this is the macerator door. We have our hose inside. Let's go ahead and reach and grab this out here. So this is the hose that comes out. This will extend out approximately 21 feet. And you can leave it like this and set this up, take it to your city hookup, to your full hookup at your campground, or there is an access port through here that you can take the cap off, and this will actually fit down through that access port. That way it's down underneath, and then you'd be able to close this door while you're parked. So a couple options there that you have of doing the macerator hose. One thing to remember when you are going to store this back in place, you are trying to stuff 21 feet of hose into the smaller compartment. So one thing that helps is if when you're done emptying your tanks, you empty your black tank first, wash out your black tank, then you empty your gray tank. When you're done emptying the gray tank, just go ahead and leave the valve open that's inside the wet bay here. Just have it cracked open a little bit so it releases the air. Once you put the cap on, that would allow you to walk this back in, and all the air pressure that's built up in this hose will actually evacuate back into the tank. That allows you to shrink this hose up a little bit more so you're not fighting that to get it in its compartment. Inside the wet bay, several different things here. We're going to show you everything on the wall here, and then I'll show you a couple things back behind the wall as well. We're going to start right over here with our hose reel. So we do have a power hose reel. Simply pull the hose reel out, hook it up to your post. When you're done with it, what you want to do is let the water drain out of it and then put the cap back on it. We do like to see this cap on all the time. That just keeps the critters from getting in there. We've had that situation before in the past where we've had some insects and things get in there and clog up the filters or the screens. So to retract it, just simply hit the button here. That will allow it to retract. Now we don't want to put too much pressure on it, so we kind of let it release it when we get to the wall there. The other thing that's in this corner right down here, this blue pipe, this is for your ice maker or purified drinking water filter. So the blue pipe here is the actual bypass pipe right now. That is in place for winterizing. When you're using your coach, you want to have that blue pipe out, but make sure you hang on to the blue pipe, and that's only going to be used for winterizing. But the filter will fit right in place here. Shut-off valve for that system as well. Right now we're in the closed position, so when you put your filter on, just open the valve, and that will allow you to have your drinking water or your ice maker. The connections that we have right here, one is going to be your flush system. So this is going to be the tank flush system. It will do both the black tank and the gray tank based on the position of this valve right above it. So what that allows us to do is wash out or rinse out those tanks. This is something that we want to see you do fairly often. Anytime you dump your black tank, it is a good idea to go ahead and flush that out as well. Just kind of helps keep that clean, keeps all the debris out from setting up or any sediment in there building up inside the tank. This connection here is the city water that's already pre-connected to your hose. One thing we do want to tell you, it's not advisable at all to take this out and put a Y connector here to connect these and use this same hose. We've seen a lot of customers do that, but that's not something that we recommend or advise. We're kind of going to steer you away from that situation. On this valve right here, this is the freshwater tank fill or your city water. This is normally going to be, normal operation is going to be in the vertical position. In order to fill your freshwater tank from your hose reel, you would simply turn this valve to be horizontal, and that would allow you to fill your freshwater tank. Now it's important while you're filling your freshwater tank that we pay attention to our monitor panel here. We don't want to overflow that tank. There is an overflow built in. It'll start blowing water out the other side on the passenger side, but we really don't want to get in that situation, so make sure we keep an eye on that so that we are not overfilling that tank. These switches here across the center, this is our light. So simply turning the light on and off. Now that does require the cargo lights to be on. So switch number 1 inside the door needs to have the cargo lights on first before that switch will operate. This guy right here, switch right here, simply says tilt and untilt. So something that we've put in for the 2024 model year is a tank tilt. What that does is it takes the air suspension and it will tilt the coach so that it is heavier on the driver's side. Basically, we're lifting up the passenger side and dropping the driver's side. That's the shape of the tanks. That allows that to flow out a little more evenly, gives you a little faster evacuation of your tanks as well. So it's just something there to assist you in dumping the tanks. The macerator switch here, on and off, all that's going to do is turn the macerator on. We are using a macerator evacuation system, and we'll see that when we take this wall off. That empties both tanks, so the gray and the black tank both go into the macerator, and everything will come out into your 1.5-inch hose that we displayed earlier. These right here are your electric gate valves, so the gray and the black. They are electric, so you simply push the button. This here would close the valve, push the top up, and that will open the valve. Our monitor panel right here is going to give you your tank levels. It does give you your battery level, your fresh tank, and your gray and black tank, as well as the ability to turn on your fresh water pump from outside. So if you were out here and didn't turn your pump on the inside, we can simply hit this button here, the toggle switch, and that will allow you to turn your water pump on. A couple other things over here in the corner. This is our whole house filter. So that is going to be used for anytime you have your city water hooked up. That is a whole house filter that will filter that water before it comes into your fixtures. It also filters that water before it goes into the tank. This is the filter that I was talking about on the other side. When you use the gravity fill, the water is not filtered, but when you use your pump, anytime you use your pump, we are running that water through this filter before it goes to your fixtures. And you'll notice that we have 2 faucet fixtures in your wet bay now. The bottom one here has the quick connect on it, so that is going to be your wet bay faucet. That's just going to be locally here for your wet bay. We are installing a 30-foot coil hose, so it's the expandable hose for you to use. This faucet here is going to be for the generator compartment. So up front in the generator, we'll show you this here in a little bit. In front of the generator, we do have a quick connect, just like this one right here. it is operated by these valves, allowing you to have hot and cold water both at your front cap. That's going to be useful when cleaning bugs off the windshield, trying to get that diamond shield clean. Anything up there, trying to wash that off is going to be key for you guys to have that hose up front. So we'll take a second here and we will go inside the panel, show you a couple valves and different shutoffs and things that you will need to know inside. And there you can see we have the hose. We will also have this connection here. That is for your 3-inch dump. So if you had to use your 3-inch dump, this is kind of what we consider our emergency dump. This would connect down here to the bottom. That allows you to put your sewer hose onto here so that it's not getting in contact with the ground. The 30-foot hose, which is right here, is going to be in this compartment as well. And you will also find the filters. Now the dealership will probably install these for you. This filter here is going to be the drinking water filter, so that's going to be over here and go in that, just screws right into there. And this is the cartridge for your whole house filter. So some of the things inside that you need to know about are the dump valves. This particular valve right here is for the 3-inch emergency or the bypass dump. That's what's going to drop out the bottom. That's where you got to get the old stinky slinky out that we're trying to get away from, which is why we went to the macerator system anyways. So that's going to be a 3-inch dump. We want to have that closed. Always keep that closed unless you are truly using the 3-inch dump. Back behind here on the right side of the macerator is another valve. It's got a gray handle on it. That is the 1.5-inch discharge. That goes to this sewer hose, the macerator hose, 21-foot hose that we talked about earlier, coming out of this rear fender. So that's the primary one that we would use. It is okay to leave that valve open if you're going to be using your macerator. But anytime you would be using this 3-inch dump, you want to make sure that you would close that 1.5 inch. If we don't close that 1.5 inch valve and we use the 3-inch dump, we are still filling up that 1.5 inch hose. You guys are going to have a really good surprise when you go to use that 1.5 inch hose the next time. So we want to make sure if we're not using the 1.5 inch that we keep that valve closed. Down here is a valve for the winterizer. So that's going to be this clear hose. If you ever have to winterize your coach, that's what this clear hose is for. You can simply put this down in your solution of antifreeze and turn this valve. Once you turn the valve, you would turn on the fresh water pump. It will draw that water in from your jug here into all your fixtures and faucets. So we'll go ahead and close that up. There are a couple more valves in here that we want to talk about. Further on inside here are 2 low point valves, a hot and a cold low point. Those are just to drain the entire system. So if you were going to winterize, it's best practice to open these valves here, go inside and open a faucet and let all that water gravity drain out of your plumbing system. It's just an easy way to kind of drain everything out here to the lowest point. There's another valve up here up top. That is on the output side of your pump. So that valve is specific in protecting the fresh water tank from filling up while you are on city water. We've had that in the past where inadvertently the fresh water tank will fill while you're on city water. Part of that is because it can back flush through the pump. Kind of comes down to a sanitation thing. Make sure you're keeping the system sanitized out. Anytime we get hard water deposits in the pump itself, it would allow that water to backflow into the fresh water tank. And you could be set up on city water for the next 3 weeks and not realize it, and the water's just been trickling a little bit at a time in your fresh water tank, and eventually it overflows your fresh water tank. You will get a warning on your VegaTouch saying that your fresh water tank is full, but if you don't monitor that, you're going to start dripping water off the other side, and then you're going to get worried a little bit and go, hey, where's all this water coming from? This is going to prevent that from happening. So if we're not going to be using the pump, we're going to be hooked up to city water, it's a best practice to have that valve closed. There is one more valve located inside the wet bay, and it's going to be right up here. It is located inside this, gotta find it here, right there. This valve is located in here. What that is for is coming from your inlet right here, coming across the wall into this fresh water tank. So if you're at a campground and hey, my filter's getting clogged up, or it's time to change my filter, instead of going over to your pedestal, turning off the water, disconnecting the hoses, anything like that, you can simply come to this valve here, close that valve, release the pressure, and that will allow you to change out your whole house filter. So that pretty much covers everything in the wet bay. We'll go ahead and close this back up and show you what that looks like. For our power cord connections, inside this door on the driver's side, we do have the power cord reel. You notice that we are already hooked up to shore power, so our connection right now at the moment is from 50 amp right here. This is the adapter, 50 amp to 30, and then we put a 110 adapter here, and we are plugged into an extension cord. So it is okay to do that. It's not our preferred method, but where we're at right now, doing these videos, that's the only power that we have available. So it is capable of doing that. There are settings and things that we've adjusted in the VegaTouch system, which we can go over a little bit later as well. On your shore cord reel here, there's a couple things that's important to this. Before we plug our coach in, we obviously want to turn the breaker off, make sure the post or the pedestal breaker is turned off before we ever plug this in. Once it's plugged in, then you would turn your pedestal breaker on. We also do recommend, it's not a requirement, but it's highly recommended that you use an external surge guard. That's just protecting your shore cord and all the devices in your coach. We do have a surge guard built into the transfer switch, but it is a one-time use only, so if it takes a hit, takes a lightning strike or a surge or anything like that, the chances are it's going to take that transfer switch out, and then you won't have power. The external surge guards are usually resettable. They will auto reset themselves, so they can take a hit, take a power spike, and then they'll just shut off and come back on. So highly recommended that you get one of those as well. Another thing about the shore cord, it doesn't matter if it's extended 2 feet or 20 feet, the cord is 30 foot long. It doesn't matter how long that cord is out or how much of it is still on the reel, there's no harm there. What we don't want to do is turn this or run this, pull this cord out or retract this cord while the unit is powered up. There's just too much power going through that cord, and it could jeopardize some of those connections inside the shore cord reel itself. So we don't want to do that. All right, some other things that are in this compartment on this box right here where our switch is for the power cord. There are 110 outlet for our vacuum, and then there's a wall plate down here. That wall plate's going to have 2 coax cables on it. Those coax cables are going to be one part cable, and the other one is going to be for a yard dish. So we have it pre-wired up that you could have a yard dish, a satellite dish. You know, we put the Traveler on the roof, but let's say you're in a location where you have a lot of tree cover and you're not getting good satellite signal. You could have a yard dish, kind of like the tailgater. You could set it out in the yard somewhere where it has a better signal and just simply run the wire to that, and that is pre-wired directly to the entertainment center where you could connect that to your satellite receiver. That would give you your signal that you're looking for. The other thing that's going to be in this compartment is the AquaHot. So a couple things that we need to talk about on the AquaHot. Number one is this reservoir right here. So that reservoir is your boiler fluid. It is propylene glycol and distilled water 50-50 mix. We do want you to use the same color solution in there. So what we're currently using in our production facility is Century Fluids. That is the green, kind of a Mountain Dew green yellow color. So we want to make sure that you're using the same color in that system as well. The things that you'll need to know, make sure this is up to par here, that we want to be between the cold and the hot line, and we want to check that when the system is hot. So that fluid will expand when it gets hot. That's when we want to check it, is when it's warmed up. The other thing is the diesel filter right back here. So this AquaHot does require annual maintenance. Number one is you're going to have to change the filter for the diesel. And number two, you're going to have to change the fuel nozzle. So the fuel nozzle is down inside the compartment. You have to take the cover off. It's best practice to have someone do that, an authorized AquaHot facility or a dealership to do that for you. The other thing that we can talk about here is this bypass system. So there is a water heater bypass, the red and blue valves back here, or the water lines with the valves on them. That is a bypass system. Now that bypass is there for sanitizing your water system. What we don't want to do is run any kind of chlorinated solution, bleach, chlorine, anything like that you would find in most sanitation products. We do not want to run that through the AquaHot because the AquaHot has copper internal water lines. Chlorine, bleach, and copper, they just don't mix very well, kind of pits it out a little bit, so we don't want that to happen. So anytime you sanitize this unit, you want to make sure that you use the bypass. Now winterizing, on the other hand, is a different subject and a different story. You want to make sure that you winterize this AquaHot. The water line inside domestic water line is kind of a loop that does this around the burner, so it always has water in the bottom. We cannot get that water out. Even if you blow the lines out, if you drain them out, you're not going to get all that water out. Chances of that freezing, it's not likely, but it is possible, so we want to make sure we have that protected. Anytime you winterize your coach, make sure that you also winterize your AquaHot as well. The control for the AquaHot is all the way back here on the back wall. That's what we call the reporter. So that's just a digital touch screen. You can go through that digital touch screen and you can see the options. You can turn it on from there. You can see if there's any fault codes or anything like that. So there is a reporter down here in the basement. That also is duplicated on your VegaTouch screen on the inside of the coach. So we have access to that from inside the coach as well. So in the next compartment up, we have the central vac system. Just want to show you real quick, that is this Dirt Devil central vac system. The one thing is important about this, make sure that you guys are installing the bag in it. We do not install the bag from here. The dealership should do that for you. If they haven't, before you use this central vac system, make sure that you install that bag. Your coach will come with a box of accessories. So that is this box down here. We'll just get that out right here, maximize standard cleaning set. So that is the hose and all the attachments for the central vac. There are several different ports inside the coach. You will have one in the hallway, you've got one down here in the basement, and then also a dust pan for the central vac. So you could use a broom or Swiffer or anything like that, sweep everything to that one location, then just open that dust pan and it automatically turns that vacuum on and pulls it down here. In this next compartment here, we want to talk about the slide out motors. So the slide out motor is going to be mounted right up here. It is centrally located in the middle of most of our slide outs. So just to give you the location of each motor, Super Slide is going to be accessible in the basement. The kitchen slide will also be accessible in the basement. The bed slide is going to be under the bed itself, so you just lift up the bed and you'll see the motor there. The vanity slide out, that's probably the hardest one to get to. That motor is kind of tucked up inside the wheel well. We cover that with a metal pan, seal it up really good. So that one's hard to get to. But the reason we want to talk about the slide out motors is if they ever would quit. There's a couple things we can talk about. We want you guys to feel comfortable that if something did happen, you're not stranded somewhere not being able to use these rooms. So the motors are all the same. They have the same footprint. You can take this motor out here and mount it to the kitchen if the kitchen had gone out, and then you can operate and you can switch those back and forth. So they just mount up to the same way. The way those things mount up, there are 4 bolts that hold those in place, 2 bolts that hold that to the floor. And then there's 2 shear pins. The 2 shear pins are the driving factor. So the motor has a shaft coming through it. It's got the 2 shear pins in it. If we take those 2 shear pins out, this room is free floating, which means we could physically push this room in and out without an issue. Now, people laugh at that because we're talking about a super slide here that weighs a little over 3,000 pounds. Yes, you can manually push this up. We've done it here. It takes about 6 of our guys in the shop to get this up the hill. But once we're up that hill, we can normally push this in with 2 or 3 people. So it is possible to do this, and we have had to do it in the past. We would simply take out the shear pins at the motor, push the room in. Once we have the room set in place, we would either A, want to put the shear pins back in, or B, find a way to secure this room. The easiest way to secure this room is when we look at the motor and show you the cross shaft, you can simply put a pair of vice grips on the cross shaft, have it wedged up against the bottom of the floor, and that will hold that slide out in place, and you can drive it down the road in case of an emergency. So those are all emergency things that we talk about. The motor is DC, so it's just reverse polarity. You could use something as simple as a cordless screw gun battery. It needs to be less than 16 volts, and you could connect directly to the wires at the motor themselves. Maybe we have a controller issue where the slide controller is not operating the rooms. We've got a bad relay or a fuse or something in there that's not repairable at the time. You can simply just connect 12 volt power. It's reverse polarity directly to the motor, and that will operate this room in and out. When we do that, make sure that we're not holding that power on there. We don't want to overextend or over retract that room. That puts too much pressure on the outside wall and too much pressure on the fascia board on the slide out itself. So we'll give you a couple shots here of the motor and how those shear pins are located and just the things that we would need to take out there. All right, so these right here are the wires. This is just going to be reverse polarity. So if we disconnect these right here, the red and black wire, we could hook directly to a 12 volt power source as long as it's less than 16 volts on the cordless screw gun batteries, and that would operate this motor. The shear pins are going to be these guys right here. So there is a cotter pin that holds those in place. There is one on either side of the motor. So you'd want to be able to get both of those out in order to get this room to roll. The mounting bolts for it here, you can see right here, this is what's mounting this plate to the floor. And then on the other side of the motor here, there are 4 bolts. These 4 bolts are what mount the motor in place. If you would take out the shear pins, these are slip shafts. They just slide over. Take the 4 bolts out, this motor can drop right down. We can exchange that for wherever we need. If we were in the situation where the brake was bad and we needed to lock this room in place, this is here on the cross shaft where we would want to put a pair of vice grips here, kind of force that up against the floor, and that would hold that cross shaft in place so that the room doesn't run out while you're driving down the road. So in the front compartment here on the driver's side, there's a large access panel here. Behind this access panel, we want to show you, this is where we are housing the Starlink system and our awning control. So just by removing this out, this can show you, these guys up here are the junction boxes for our awning controls. These are actually the controllers that run your Girard patio awnings on the passenger side. And then these two devices here are the Starlink system. This right here is going to be your power supply. So power comes into that, and then from the antenna on the roof, there's an Ethernet cable that comes in and plugs into the power supply. From the power supply, that goes over to a router, and then you would have this wireless router that you could connect to all of your devices. Now we are installing in our coaches a Wi-Fi arranger system that ties the entire coach, all of the devices in the coach, to the network. We have added a spare wire right here. This is just an Ethernet cable that goes from this compartment to our Wi-Fi arranger device. If you wanted to choose that option and you wanted Starlink wired directly to your coach, that would eliminate this router here. We would simply unplug this router from the power supply, plug in this Ethernet cable here into the power supply, so that's giving us our output signal, and then we would go to our Wi-Fi Ranger device and plug that Ethernet cable in there as well. That would give you direct link Starlink to all the devices in your coach. Inside our front fender compartment here, there are some fuse panels. So we have a fuse panel here, we've got our light, and then the equalizer leveling system. So this is just the control panel outside. This is a smart level controller as well. So this has an app, equalizer has an app you can connect and operate this from your cell phone or mobile device. The fuse panel here, and then this is the generator slide extender retract. So we'll talk about that. In order to extend your generator, your ignition needs to be on, the unit needs to be in neutral, and the park brake needs to be set. Once that's done and you have adequate air pressure, if you push the extend button, that generator slide will come out. That gives us access to the front fender. So we'll show that here in just a little bit. But first we want to talk about the fuses, and there are some hidden fuses in here as well. So one thing to be sure of is behind this panel is you will have access to another fuse panel. So it does kind of take a little trick to get that out. Once we get that out, this black panel here is a removable cover. That is our chassis fuse panel. So there are several fuses back here, clean battery, clean ignition, customer accessory. Those are all there. That's part of the chassis. So at some point we may ask you to check one of those fuses. Everything for the keyless entry is there. At some point we may ask you to take those fuses out and reset that system. There are also a series of breakers right above it, and we'll show that here in just a second, but there are mini breakers here. Those are manual reset mini breakers. Primarily you need to know that those go to your driver and passenger seat. So anytime you may swivel that seat around and go to use a footrest and it doesn't work, this is where you would check to make sure that that breaker didn't trip. It just has a little small button right on the top of it. The breaker's about that size. Little black button on the top. You just push that black button and that will reset it. So we're going to show you the generator slide door. With the button inside the fender here, the engine is running to build that air pressure, the park brake is set, and the coach is in neutral. When we hit the extend button, that will start to extend that generator door, giving us access to the front cap. It does have limits on it, so it will stop on its own. When it stops, just go ahead and release that button. So on the front fender, it is a different style door here. We kind of have it airtight to keep any liquid or air out of it. So it is hard to close. Where normal cargo doors, you would simply just close and they would latch in place. As you can see, this one's not going to close that direction. The easiest way to close this is just by applying constant pressure right to the center of the door. That will ensure that that door latches without damaging the fender or the door. So in the front generator compartment, we're going to talk about a couple things, including the generator. There's a start and stop on the top of it here with an hour meter, as well as a breaker. Now the breaker is probably going to be the thing you use the most anytime you take this in and have it serviced. The technician is going to turn this breaker to the off position, and rarely do they turn that breaker back on. So you may get back on the road and not have any 110 power in there to run that front air conditioner. Just make sure that we turn that breaker back on and confirm that this breaker is turned on. The other thing that's in here is going to be your windshield washer fluid reservoir. That's going to be this white bottle here at the front. And just below that, like we mentioned previously, is going to be that connection for your 30-foot hose to wash your front cap. The valve for that is in the wet bay. So there's just a connection port down here, just a quick connect where we can plug that hose in. So that's to wash the front cap. The other thing that's going to be inside here is located on the cab air conditioner system, there is a cab air filter. You guys can change that out. We're going to show you where that's located and just a couple screws that we pull out, and then that filter will come out and you can change that out as well. On your entry steps, there is a switch just inside the door here labeled step power. What that does is allows the step to stay out when you close the door. So if you're going to be set up at a camp somewhere, you can disable the action of the steps and lock them out in place. Now that is going to be overridden anytime you turn the ignition on and you close the door, or if you would turn that step power off. The other thing built into the steps is going to be the storage drawer right here. So just light things, gloves, things like that, tire pressure tester, things of that, dog leashes, doggy bags. We get a slew of things in there. What you can't do is store your gold bars in there. It's kind of too heavy for it. They'd fly out driving down the road. The next thing up here is going to be the step light power. So anytime we hit the step light, that will turn off our step lighting here, outside and inside as well. And then the main power switch. So the main power switch is kind of what we consider our reset switch. It has a little red light next to it. Anytime you would be asked by one of our technicians, phone technicians, service technicians, Firefly, anybody like that, hey, we need you to do a power reset so that we can reset the software in your coach. Simply by turning off that main power switch, counting to 5, maybe 10, and then turning that back on will reset that system. It's no different than resetting your cell phone or restarting a computer, where it resets the software, and that's sometimes we will have to do that in our coach. The other thing is going to be the switch panel right inside the door here. That is going to be the Firefly switch panel. It is a 3.5-inch touchscreen. It will have multiple options on it, including your master interior light switch. So the master interior light switch has a memory to it. If you walk out the door and let's say you have just the entry lights on and maybe the living room ceiling accent light, you hit the off button on that, it will memorize that you had just those two lights on. The next time you come back into the coach, if you simply just touch the on button, it will turn just those two lights on. If you didn't want it to do that, just pressing and holding that switch for 3 seconds will turn all of the lights on to 100%. The caveat to this is if you hit the off button twice by mistake, it will also erase that memory. So be cautious of that. If you walk out, hit the off button, and then your husband walks out and hits the off button, or your wife walks out and hits the off button, it has canceled out the memory. So just be cautious of that. One touch on the off memorizes the previous settings. One touch on the on returns to those settings. All right, now that we're inside the coach, we're going to go ahead and explore everything that's in and do kind of the delivery of the inside. This particular floor plan is going to have different features and functions. So as we go through this, remember some of these things may be in your coach, some of them may not be, as we do put optional equipment in as well. We're going to start right here in the passenger side overhead with the components in the passenger side overhead. This first component here is going to be the Winegard Razor antenna. This is the over-the-air antenna. So this is what would give you your local TV stations. Simply by pressing and turning this on, it will automatically search. We're inside a building, so it's not going to find a whole lot, but it will continue to search and rotate. It will display how many channels it finds and what position it's in. If you wanted to fine-tune that a little bit, you could use the arrows here to turn that a little bit and get a little better reception if that's what you're looking for. It is going to continue to search. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. In order to use the part cable, which is the port that was outside by the short cord, you are going to need to have this in the off position. If this is powered up, you won't be able to use the part cable. It distorts that signal. You won't be able to find any channels. So if you're using part cable at a full hookup, make sure that this is turned off. The next controller in here is going to be your slide out switches. So that has all 4 slide outs on it. It's not really recommended to run all 4 slide outs at the same time. And really that's kind of based on the power that they draw, and also knowing when that slide out is all the way extended or all the way retracted. And our slide out system is kind of unique. It's not really when the unit goes all the way out, the slide out goes all the way out and stops. We really don't want it to go out and stop on its own. We want to stop it ourselves before it goes out and stops completely on its own. So the best way to kind of explain this is by listening to the pitch of the motor. When that motor starts to bog down a little bit and that pitch changes, that's the sign that we need to let go of the switch, and that room should be set and sealed where it's at. The other thing about our slide out system is that you only want to run your slide outs when your coach is at ride height. So in our process of start up and tear down, or set up and tear down when you get to your campground, we always want to run our slide outs first. So we back into our campsite, or we use the pull through campsite, and then we would want to run our slide outs out while the coach is at ride height. If we do it while the coach is level, we take the chance of binding up our slide outs, and really it comes down to the way that we manufacture the coach. We manufacture it where the slide outs are square to the opening while the coach is at ride height, so that's when they need to be ran or operated to be optimal procedures. So that is going to be the slide out system. This next control here is going to be the air conditioner overrides. That is in case you would ever run into a situation where maybe the VegaTouch screen has gone down, or we went to a black screen, we can't get that screen to wake up. This would be an emergency override for the air conditioners. Now the thing about the emergency override is that it bypasses any of the safeties that are in the air conditioner itself. So it is emergency use only. We want to use these one at a time for a maximum of 30 minutes. So if we were going to use these today, we would turn on air conditioner 1, we would allow that to run for 30 minutes, and then we would turn that off and turn on AC 2, allow that to run for 30 minutes, then turn that off and run AC 3, run that for 30 minutes, and you can just keep going through that rotation. The reason we need to do that is because the safeties are bypassed. We're not looking at the freeze sensor, we're not looking at the pressure switch. If that evaporator would freeze up, you could run into an issue of freezing your compressor up, causing damage to the AC. We don't want that to happen. So by running it for a half hour and then turning it off, by the time you get back around to the rotation, anything that's iced up in that air conditioner would have melted down, and you'd be okay to use that at that point. All right, so that is the controls that are in the side overhead here. When we get to the front overhead here, this doesn't have the option of the traveler satellite, but the traveler satellite would be right here. The controller would be here. That would be the power for that. You hit the power button, that would run your traveler satellite on the roof up, and it would automatically search for its location. Anytime you want to run that down, you're getting ready to leave, make sure you press and hold that power button until it says powering down, and then the screen will come and say stowing or stowed. We want to make sure that that satellite is stowed before we take off on our journey. In the driver's side overhead is going to be our Trimark keyless entry system with a couple of switches here. Those switches are the keypad authority and the key fob programming switch. So the things we need to know about that is the key fob programming is simple. You press and release that switch 3 times, then hit any button on your key fob. You will need to do all the key fobs you have, so the coach comes with 2. If for whatever reason one lost its programming, you would simply press that button 3 times and release it, then hit any button on your key fob, and that would resync that key fob with the controller. Remember, you have to do both of those at the same time. For the keypad authority, when we went over the keyless entry, we talked about how to set your own access code, and that you would need the authority code, which our default authority code was 5 times. You have the option of setting your own default authority code so that you could change that as well. Simply to change that, come in and press that toggle switch 1 time, go back out to the grab handle, and it's already going to be flashing, it will already beep, you may not hear it. The key is you only have 5 seconds from the time you hit that button to get out to the grab handle. Once you get out to the grab handle, type in your new 5-digit authority code. It will beep a couple times, then type in that 5-digit authority code again. That is just verifying or certifying that that is the correct code. Then that will reset your authority code. All right, so that's it for the front overhead here. If we go to the driver's side, this is going to be our breaker boxes. 2 separate breaker boxes in this compartment. The one on the left here is going to be our main breaker box. This is what we consider our main breaker box. The items in this breaker box will only operate if the shore cord is connected or the generator is running. So those are items that are heavy appliances, the stove, the fireplace, the washer and dryer, the 3 air conditioners. Those have to be in a situation where you're plugged in or have the generator running for those to operate. The other side of this is the breaker box on the right. This is our inverted breaker box. So anything in this breaker box runs off of the inverter. That's going to include things like the refrigerator, the TVs. We have several outlets in the coach, the living room, the bedroom, some of the bathrooms, depending on your floor plan, will also be an inverted circuit. So what that means is those components will operate when we're not plugged in or when we don't have the generator running. That would simply run off the battery power. Now when the battery power gets low, this does have an automatic cutoff. Our low battery cutoff is set to 10.7, so should your batteries ever achieve 10.7 volts, the inverter will disable itself to protect your batteries from draining any further. One thing we want to make sure of is when we get ready and we're going to leave, we want to make sure that these are latched. Anytime you leave this open, you will get a rattle driving down the road. We've heard that call and complaint several times. I got this rattle up front, and it's really just this breaker box. So make sure we have those latched and that this door is closed before we travel. So the driver and passenger seats are really both the same. They have the same features on this particular model. They do have the massage. This is the controller for the massage. One thing about it being right here is every time you walk in the coach, you will probably lean up against this and turn that on, so the seat will start vibrating, or you'll hear it doing something. So just remember that that's going to be in that controller. The thing about our seats is they do come all the way forward. They have a footrest. The recline is powered as well, and they will also swivel around. So if you're entertaining, have some guests with you, or you just want to sit and relax with the footrest up, you can swivel these chairs around. The key thing is that these chairs need to be in the most forward position before we swivel those. So we're just going to take a moment here, run the seat all the way forward. I'll show you how they do swivel around. Once we get the seat into the most forward position, it'll come to a stop here pretty quick. And there we go. There is a lever on the other side here that when we pull up on this lever, that allows us to swivel the seat around. And then once the seat is swiveled around, we can move it accordingly, move it back. We can run the recline back. We can put the footrest up. We can use the massage. The heat and cool on the driver and passenger seat will only operate while the ignition is on. So if you were just sitting here, set up at the campground, you wanted to sit down and heat your seat a little bit, you would have to turn the ignition on to get that to work. That's kind of a safety built in so that it only operates while the ignition is on. So we can't forget that we left it on and it gets the seat too hot. The other thing to remember is once we get done, we do want to swivel that back around. We will need that to be in the forward facing position again. So this is a good time to also talk about this. Anytime we run our slide outs in and out when we're getting ready to leave, we also want to make sure that these seats are clear of your slide out. We don't want to get it too close to here. Now, we're not saying that you have to have this in the most forward position. That's kind of how we have it in all of our literature, but really the common sense thing is to do is gauge this and make sure that we are not getting in the way of the slide out. We don't want to obstruct that slide out in any way because damage would occur to both the slide out and the seat. So just by making sure we have enough clearance right here for this slide out to come all the way in is kind of the proper way to make sure that these are lined up before you run your slide outs in and out. So your main TV entertainment center, we do have the TV and the sound bar. The sound bar is going to be your primary audio source for the TV or anything that's playing through the TV. Now we do have a matrix system inside our entertainment center here. Simply on the matrix system, that allows us to have 4 inputs and 4 outputs. We currently have the Blu-ray player hooked up as well as the dash radio. So the center stack of the dash is hooked up to this display. You have 2 extra ports there. The port B is for your satellite receiver. If you choose to put a satellite receiver in, we would simply say that's the best way to do this, is hook that output from your satellite receiver to port B of your matrix. That will allow you to have that satellite signal on all 4 TVs in the coach. The last auxiliary port here on the back side is port D. When you guys plug something in there, and the options here are limitless. You can do, we've had people do Apple TVs, we'd have people put PlayStations in, we have had people run a Fire Stick through that port as well, and that allows you to have that device on all 4 TVs. We had one couple that did a photo album, digital photo album, that was just plugged into that on an HDMI, and it will play that through the matrix system. Inside is your Blu-ray player as well, so that is also going to be part of the entertainment center. That is going to be on the matrix for port A. Now the other thing you can do is when you put your dash radio and you select dash radio on your matrix, you can display your dash radio and your cameras on your TV. So that's kind of a security option while you're parked. If you want to see something outside, maybe even in the bedroom at night where you can just turn the TV on and have your exterior cameras, that is available to do so. On the wall plate in here, there's several connections where we come from our yard dish outside that we talked about previously, and also in here is a little label for your Wi-Fi Ranger. That is your username and password for the Wi-Fi extender, or the Ranger. We're using the Winegard Wi-Fi Ranger. That is the username and password. You would need that to sign in your device, whether it's your cell phone or an iPad or a computer. If you were to hook your Starlink directly to the Wi-Fi Ranger, that would give you access to the Starlink internet from anywhere in the coach, really within the Wi-Fi signal. The other thing that we want to talk about is inside the entertainment center, there is a button. Behind the fireplace here is storage. So by reaching up here, find the button right here. When you hit the button, this fireplace will open, and you'll have storage behind the fireplace. Now a couple things are going to happen here. When you open this door, the fireplace is going to shut down. So if you have the fireplace on and this door swings open, it's kind of a safety feature there so that it shuts off as soon as that happens, so that we're not getting up close to anything over here maybe getting over here and getting that cabinet too hot. We don't want that to happen. And the other thing to remember in that is if this is not closed properly and not securely fastened in place, it will not operate either because it is controlled by a magnetic switch. So in order to close this, just make sure that it's in there. Give it a nice little tug here just to make sure that that is completely sealed up. One more thing to talk about here is this little guy right here. This is the IR repeater. So if you're sitting on the sofa, whether you have theater seats or you have a hide-a-bed sofa, you would be using your TV remotes. You can leave this cabinet closed. This is the IR repeater, which will control your matrix and your Blu-ray player through the cabinet. So every time you hit a button on a remote, you'll see this flash a little blue light. It's okay, that's what it's supposed to do. The one thing you need to remember is when you are using that and the door is closed, which is the way we want you to operate it, there is a time delay on those operations. So if you change the matrix channel, it's going to take about 7 to 10 seconds for that to actually change. When you change the TV channel, it's not instantaneous, it's a couple millisecond delay, so it's not really recognizable to the TV, but to the matrix it is. So you just want to keep that in mind. This is the IR repeater system. So we also have the wine cooler installed as well. Simply open and close. This is secured down to the floor here. There is going to be a stop that's put on here, so you will find the stop before we ship this unit. There's going to be a stop, and you will want to make sure that that is locked before you drive. One thing is we don't want to see your red wine going all over the floor and getting that down into the grout. So make sure that this is locked before we travel. Inside this cabinet here is really kind of a computer station where you have a tray, set a laptop, put a computer, and you can work from as a desk option here as well. All right, so the microwave, simple microwave with a convection oven in it. One thing to remember about the microwave, obviously, there's going to be a manual in the black satchel that comes with the coach, so pay attention to that and get in there for the details of how this operates. But the one thing we want to mention is that you do need to have the vent on the outside open. So just outside, and it's about right here on the outside wall, there is a vent outside. 2 tabs at the bottom. Make sure you push those tabs up and open that vent. We need to have that vent open anytime we are using this microwave or convection oven. That allows that air to vent outside rather than being trapped inside the microwave. On our cooktop, this is induction cooktop. It is a 110 element, so that does kind of bring in a couple little caveats for us. You do have to have the magnetic cookware, so it has to be the magnetic cookware specifically for induction. Cast iron will work, however we don't recommend it because it will scratch the glass. It's a little bit heavier. You accidentally drop that on here, you can crack this glass. The one thing to remember is because it is a 110 element, it only can achieve a level of 10 between the 2 burners. So for example, if you were cooking, boiling some noodles here, you're going to make spaghetti, boiling noodles, and you were trying to brown the hamburger meat, you're not going to be able to do both at the same time where you have them at maximum heat. You're going to be able to do 5 and 5, or maybe 6 and 4. Maybe the noodles are done, so we turn those down to 2 and we run the meat up to 8. So you can only do this in a combination of 10 between the 2 burners. And that is strictly because it's a 110 element, not a 220. All right, so moving down here to the dishwasher. The dishwasher is on an inverted circuit. So here's the thing to remember about it. The biggest thing is, obviously you can go through all the cycles, the control boards on the front here, but the biggest thing is to remember that we lock this before we travel. So in order to lock this dishwasher, we're just going to show you how that works. There's a lock button right here. If we press and hold this lock button, it beeps 1 time, and that just locks this display so you don't operate anything here, accidentally touch it, maybe bump into it with your knee. The single beep locks just the display. We need to press and hold this button until we get a second beep, which will lock the drawer. Now, anytime your power is interrupted, there is a good possibility that that will unlock itself. So if we went and turned the inverter off or disconnected from shore power at this point, this would unlock itself, because what they don't want to do is have that thing locked up when it's not powered up. When it powers back up, it should remember that it was locked, and it should go back to the locked position kind of on a startup. But just to be cautious, make sure anytime the power is interrupted that we come back and double check this lock. Make sure that the red icon is on and that this is in an actual locked position before we take off driving. So in the mid-bath, you could have one of 2 toilets. This one is going to be set up with a macerated toilet, and it's really based on the floor plan and what it takes to get to the black tank. So this one is opposite of where the black tank is located, so we use a macerator toilet. The buttons on the wall here, simple number 1, number 2. This is for a light flush, this is for a heavy flush, kind of a water saver here. So anytime you need to flush the toilet, you press the button once, that flushes the toilet. Anytime we're getting ready to leave and go on a trip, we want you to drain this bowl out. So by simply pressing both of these and holding them in, that will drain the toilet. That drains the bowl out, all the water in the bowl, so that it's not sloshing around while you're driving. Now you notice that this little red light is on here. That is indicating that our black tank is full. Currently right now this would not flush if I would just push this button one time. There is an emergency override on this. Let's say that you know your tank is not full. Maybe we have an issue with a sensor. There is an emergency override where you could press and hold this button for 6 seconds and the toilet will flush. Now don't use that as an everyday procedure, because what if the tank is full? We don't want to be overflowing that black tank. So make sure we're using caution that it should be green when the tank is empty. It'll be yellow when the tank is just about 50 to 60%, and then it will turn red when the tank gets to about 95, 100%. We want to make sure that we're not overflowing that tank. On the bedroom mattress, we are using an air mattress, so it does have a remote control that comes with it. You can choose the memory. There's 2 remotes with it, so there's a left and a right. You can choose the memory here. You can have 2 settings for it memorized in it. But anytime we run this up and down, you'll hear the pump kick on, and it's going to air that mattress up or take that pressure in that mattress down. One thing you do want to remember about this being an air mattress, anytime you know you're going to be traveling into a higher altitude, it is a great idea to drain these bladders out. Just kind of let that air out so that we don't have any trapped air. In higher altitudes, those can swell up and it could cause a leak in that mattress. So we want to make sure that we're making sure that they are not fully inflated when we're going across the mountains or we're getting into a higher altitude. So on the pocket doors, just a simple handle here that pulls this out. This is a double pocket door, so it'll have 2 doors that come out with it. One thing to remember about the pocket doors is they need to be all the way open or all the way closed. They will lock into place. So simply go in this direction. They do lock into place here. Pull the handle down to run those back in. Anytime we're going to be traveling, we want them to be in the in-wall position or the closed position here. When we do travel, when you release the park brake, there's a air ram solenoid on the bottom that makes contact with the door, and that kind of holds that in place. So if you're driving down the road and you thought that it would be a good idea to try to close this, it is going to hang up at the bottom and bend that actuator. That actuator is there to keep this from moving while you're driving down the road. That's going to be on every pocket door that we have in the coach. When you release that park brake, it is a safety that locks these doors in place. So on the bedroom ceiling fan, it's just the fan here in the bedroom. The controller is on the bottom here of the bed overhead. There are 3 positions this switch can be in. There's a 1 dot and 2 dots, and then the off in the center. 1 dot is for low speed, 2 dot is for the high speed. So if we just go ahead and turn that on to low, the fan's going to come on. Just to turn it off, put that back into the middle location, and that will turn that fan off. That is 12 volts, so it'll operate when you're plugged in or if you're not plugged in to circulate air in the bedroom. So in the showers, we have installed a shower miser, which recirculates your hot water. In order to operate this, first we would want to turn our shower faucet on so we've got water coming through the shower itself. This controller right here, a little bit different color, if we turn this, it will bypass the shower head and it recirculates back to the fresh water tank. This is the indicator for that, so when this blue dot here starts to turn gray and then it will eventually go to white, that means that it's up to temperature and it has gotten hot enough to be comfortable hot water for your shower. You would go ahead and turn this off of the bypass, and then that would allow the water to come out of your respective shower heads. One thing to remember when you are using the shower miser, we are filling up the fresh water tank. So if you're using this while you're hooked up to city water, another one of those things where inadvertently we're filling up the fresh water tank, and we have to manage that and watch to make sure we don't overflow your fresh water tank. All right, for our washer and dryer, we'll start down here with the washer. Pressing the power button, we'll turn that on. This is going to be where you put in your detergent. And then obviously loading anything here, closing the door, setting your settings there, and hit the play button. That will go off and do its job, do its cycle. So one thing we want to remember about this is when we're traveling, after we've used this washer, we really don't want to leave it stored like this with the door closed. We want to have this cracked open so that it doesn't build up any kind of mold or mildew inside the drum itself. That allows it to air out. The other thing for maintenance wise is that this is going to have a filter or a screen here. These bottom panel here is removable. If we take out this white block here, take out that bottom panel, inside there's a small little screen that catches anything. Most of the time that's where we're finding pennies, toothpicks, and a couple dollar bills here and there that we've left in our clothes when we put them in the washer. The other thing is going to be the detergent that you use. One thing we don't want to use in these is any of the pods. Some of those pods will build up in the screen, and that clogs the screen, and then you won't have adequate water flow. It'll start giving you a fault code and won't finish its wash cycle. When we shift up here to the dryer, same thing, we can set our timing here. It does have a temperature setting, and then the start button. The biggest thing for maintenance on the dryer is to make sure that we are always cleaning out our vent screen. So just inside the door, we want to make sure that we take this out, clean the screen off really good every time we use that dryer. There is an outside vent as well that over time could build up a little bit of lint. We want to make sure that we keep that clean as well. So the bedroom TV is kind of the same as the entertainment center and the exterior entertainment center, where the sound for the bedroom TV actually comes out of the sound bar that's mounted down here. A couple things is this is on a lift, so this will tilt open here, have access to the back here where you'll find the safe. This safe is going to come with a set of master keys. When you take delivery of your coach, make sure you have these master keys, because that is how you're going to set your code for your safe. So make sure we have those master keys. The things that operate to this bedroom TV is going to be the matrix, for one, that comes from the entertainment center. And then also inside this cabinet you have an additional Blu-ray DVD player. So that is going to be wired directly to the TV. The off-air antenna is going to be wired to the TV. The matrix is going to be wired to the TV. You also see there's a little HDMI splitter up here on the wall. That is a 1x2 splitter, so it has 2 inputs and 1 output. There is a small white plate right here, whereas if you wanted to put something else in here, whether it's a satellite receiver, additional satellite receiver on its own, you wanted to put a PlayStation or an Apple TV, that can be plugged into this HDMI port here. Select the second channel, so channel number 2 on the HDMI splitter, and that will send it to the TV itself. That's so you can put an additional component in here and display on your TV. So depending on your floor plan and the options and the refrigerator we had available at the time will depend on whether or not it has an ice maker or a water dispenser. The one thing for sure is that it will have these locks on it. There's a lock here in between the 2 doors, and there's also going to be a lock on the freezer compartment. Make sure that these are locked any time that you are not using the refrigerator, and especially while you are traveling. We want to make sure that those are locked so that these doors don't fly open, causing damage to the refrigerator. If you have the water dispenser and the ice maker, this is something that will need to be carefully taken care of when you winterize your unit. If you get into a winterization situation, you will want to make sure that you drain all the water out of this or run antifreeze into your refrigerator. Just depending on your situation will be the route you need to take. If you ever put your coach in storage, you're not winterizing it, and you are going to be in storage with the power turned off, make sure we empty this ice tray, get all the ice out of it so that it doesn't melt. If it does melt, it just runs down the door here, and then it'll leave water streaks down the whole front of your refrigerator. So let's make sure that we're emptying that out before we put it in storage. The lock on the freezer, just a simple up and down here, lift up on the handle, that allows you to open here. This particular one has an ice maker in the bottom and an ice maker in the top. So be cautious when you're using the refrigerator. Always make sure you have those doors locked when you're not using the refrigerator. So depending on your floor plan, the dinette table is expandable. And again, that is going to be dependent on your floor plan. That will allow you to have extra seating. There is a travel lock down here at the bottom of this table. We want to make sure that we unlock that. And then it's just simply pulling out the table, which extends this and gives you more seating capacity at the table. Again, one thing to remember is that before we travel, we always need to have this in the locked position. So just double check that before you take off on the road and make sure that dinette table is locked into position. If your sofa is a hide-a-bed sofa, it is equipped with a mattress on the inside. So we're just going to quickly show you how to get into this. We will want to remove all the pillows and the cushions. So we're just going to take these and set these aside just for the moment to show you how the hide-a-bed sofa works. Now this is going to be an air mattress, so we want to make sure, again, just like our bedroom mattress, that if we get into a situation where we're going to be traveling through high altitude, really it's a good idea anytime we store this mattress that we deflate it completely and leave the cap off so we're not building air pressure as we're going into a higher altitude. So once we have all the cushions off, this will simply extend out. You'll see that we have feet that hit the floor there. And then if you grab this handle here, it will allow you to pull this up. Now this mattress, being completely deflated, is going to be left in the folded position. Just simply roll this out and then you'll have access to air it up. This is going to have the air pump access in the front corner. So you just simply unzip that, plug it in. We have a wall outlet right there where you can air this mattress up. Before we store it, we want to make sure that we completely deflate this mattress and leave that cap off. So when we do store it, it will fold up into the proper position. So to store this mattress, close this back up, you will need to push down right here. That locks this into place, allowing you to be able to pick this up, and this should all just fold right in, right back into the position that it come out of, and then we can replace our cushions. So we're going to do the overview of the VegaTouch screen mounted mid of the coach. So we're just going to go through all the different features and settings on here. We'll just kind of go through the home page and then just go right down the bottom here to show you each one of these pages. From the home page, you are going to have your date and time that is being broadcast to the system by the GPS antenna. So that will be changing as you're driving, getting to a different time zone. That should change the time with the correct time zone. The next box down here is going to be the interior and exterior master lighting. So that is just a master switch that controls all interior lights and all exterior lights. Again, that will have the memory on the interior, where if you press this just one time to turn it off, it memorizes what was currently on, and then you hit it once again, it will turn on just what was on previously. These set buttons down here at the bottom, set 1, set 2, and set 3, allows you to program in specific settings. So you could tell it, maybe you turn on the kitchen lights and maybe the dinette table, living room accent, things like that. And you can set that as maybe the cooking or something to that nature. You can rename this, press and hold the set button, whatever current setting you're in, it will memorize that setting and then you name it to whatever you want. Going down further, the day shades and the night shades, those are master buttons for the entire coach that will operate all the shades, day shades and night shades in the entire coach in the down position. So that will allow you to run all of those down, and that's everything in the coach day and night. What it won't do is when you go to run them up, it will not allow you to run the shades up in the bathrooms from the screen. You have to physically be in the bathroom to do that. The away and the stow button here, those are going to be settings that when you walk away from the coach, let's say we're going to be going to the store, we want to set it up to an away setting. You can go in and pre-program that, press and hold this button for 3 seconds. That will change so that you can set it up in the manner you want it to be when you leave. You can set the timer here, the start delay is in seconds, so if you would set this to 60 seconds, let's say we do set it and then we hit the away button. It will count that down in 60 seconds, whatever you selected, it will do those operations in the coach as you walk away from it. So it's kind of a pre-programmed, we can get there and do that. This section right here, the AC source, is going to be telling us what we currently have as far as shore power or incoming power to the coach. So you would have shore power here, generator, or inverter. That would be your 3 options that you would show here. The line 1 and line 2 is going to be when you are plugged into shore power, have the generator running. That gives you the voltage that you have on each leg, as well as the amperage that we're showing through the transfer switch. So that is a transfer switch value there of 110 amperage coming through. The chassis battery and the house battery, that is exactly what they say they are. That is the battery voltage directly at the batteries themselves. This particular one is going to be 13.2 at the chassis and 13.2 at the house. That tells me that that battery isolator manager that connects those 2 banks of batteries is working properly. They're connected right now and we are charging the chassis and the house together. This voltage with all the lights on will probably be a little bit lower than what you see on the inverter page, which we can discuss here in a little bit. But you'll see the differences between those because this is going to be post-draw for the house batteries rather than directly from the battery itself. On the auto gen start and the inverter, simply by pressing the button once, it will ask you, are you sure? Would you like to enable the auto gen start? We can hit start or cancel. For the video here, we're going to do cancel just to show you. The other settings in here is if we press and hold. So a lot of these icons on here are press them once, they do one function, press and hold, it does another. On the auto gen start, you have several things here. Insufficient shore power, voltage base start, and climate start, quiet time pre-fill, and then our exercise. So insufficient shore power is going to simply be when you don't have enough shore power, you're plugged into 30 amp or maybe 20 amp, we don't have enough shore power to run what's being requested. The generator will come on and supplement that power until it meets that request, and then the generator will cycle off and go back to the present shore power, whether it's 20 or 30 or maybe even less. The voltage base start is going to be the voltage that the unit starts at. The generator will automatically start when the voltage reaches 12.4. That is not our current settings. Our default setting, that is what we use for testing. So our default setting for this is 11.7, which you can go ahead and set that now. I'll show you another page on the background where we can set all the defaults, and everything will go back to default where we want it. The climate start is going to be based on your HVAC. So if you set up your ACs or your heat pumps, say I want it to maintain this temperature, you're dry camping, you walk away from the coach, maybe you left your pets in the coach, make sure the auto gen start is on. If the temperature reaches that set point where it needs to come on, whether it's for the air conditioners or for the heat pumps, it will automatically start the generator, run the generator to meet the demand, and then it will turn the generator off. The quiet time is pretty known and well common around the US and Canada. There are parks that govern your quiet time, that they want you to be in quiet time where you're not running the generator anytime between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. That's generally what we see on their kind of requirements at a campground. So if we set the quiet time, it tells the generator I cannot start between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. The quiet time pre-fill is kind of the preface to that. It'll do this equation. Let's say the quiet time is 10 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, it'll do an equation and ask itself, hey, based on the current voltage I'm using, do I have enough voltage to be above my low battery start? So will I have enough voltage? Will I be above 11.7 at 8 a.m. in the morning? So it simply asks that question. Now it's going to say yes or no. If it says no, the quiet time pre-fill will come on and run for the 2 hours before the quiet time. We can also do the start at volts. We want it to start at a particular voltage. If we're in quiet mode, if the voltage ever reaches this point, it will start and run for this allotted time. The exercise is a little bit different. The exercise is based on Onan wants us to run this generator at least every 30 days to exercise it. If you haven't ran this generator in X amount of days, and the X amount is because you can set this to a maximum of 10 days. So let's say we set this to 10 days. If the generator had not run in the past 10 days, we hit the set button here, it shows 10 days. If it hadn't run in the last 10 days and we have this selected, that generator will automatically start on the 10th day. It'll run for 240 minutes to exercise that generator. And when we do the exercise, it is actually putting a load on it because we have the ability to transfer from the transfer cord or from the shore cord. It will automatically transfer that load so that we are truly exercising that generator. To turn this on and off from this screen, simply press the on button. It's going to ask us again, confirm, are you sure you want to do this? You can say start or cancel. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that, and then we'll close out of this screen. The inverter page is the same. If we press and hold this inverter page, it will bring us up to our settings. The key thing about this is always going to be, remember this default button right up here. So anytime we're not charging or don't have something going on or something doesn't seem right, just go ahead and hit this default button. That'll show us up to the defaults. We want to see these values here. We really don't like to see you change those values. That is put in there in place in part just because we want to have the best scenario for the batteries. This gives us the best life, the best runtime for the batteries that we're using in your coach. So we really want to maintain that in the default settings as much as possible. 50 amp and 30 amp out of phase or in phase. This is going to be automatic. Anytime you are in phase, you are 30 amp or below. Currently right now, as you've seen in a previous video, we are selected on less than 30 amp because we're plugged into an extension cord. So we really want to dial this down, and this is what you would do in this process. Because we are tied to an extension cord, we really don't want this coach to operate on anything more than 5 amps. We're going to tell it, hey, you only have 5 amps to operate. And I don't know if you can hear that, but the air conditioner just shut down when I did that. That's the energy management system saying, hey, there's not enough power in the coach to run. That is what we want to happen. That's a protection for that extension cord, for the breaker or that circuit that you're plugged into externally. That is what this is for. So anytime we use an extension cord, anytime we get below 30 amp power, we will want to manually adjust this as well. Now, if we would take this coach back out, go to the resort, plug it into a 50 amp short cord, that is going to automatically switch to 50 amp. We don't have to do anything to it. If we come back and plug into a 30 amp, we will need to change this from 5 back up to 30. So that we will have to manually do. The battery maintenance icon here is simply a balance charge of the batteries. So we can force balance charge the batteries. What that does is it provides a little bit higher voltage and a little bit higher amperage. We're basically just trying to break those plates up a little bit. Anything that's maybe solidified on those plates because we haven't used them enough or it's been sitting in storage for a while, we can try to bring those batteries back and increase the life of those batteries just a little bit by using that battery maintenance. That's something that you guys probably want to do about once a quarter. If it's on your screen, plug into 50 amp power, hit the battery maintenance, it will go into its process, and once it's done, it will return back to normal charging. So just a little maintenance for the batteries there. We go back out, you have your generator on and off here. That's going to allow you to turn the generator on or off. It will flash when you hit the button to start the generator. When you hit the off button, it's going to turn that generator off, and it will track your hours. Now there is a way to set the hours. We can look at that in a background page where we can set those hours to match the hours on the generator. You can reset these when you do maintenance and say, hey, I know I need to do my maintenance in 250 hours, so you can reset this to show that I'm in between my maintenance schedule as well. Over here on this side, we're going to have the freshwater tank, the gray and the black. So that is going to be our tank monitoring system. You can currently see where we're at right now, 71 in the fresh, 100% in the gray, and 100% in the black. We're in the middle of testing some of these coaches, so that is why you're going to see that value here. The water pump and engine preheat. The water pump is self-explanatory. Really, you turn the water pump on, it highlights the water comes on in the basement, providing water throughout the coach. The engine preheat is part of the aqua system. So that's where we talked about the block heater in the back. It's much more efficient to use this engine preheat. That's actually circulating engine antifreeze into the aqua hot and heating it and then returning it back to the engine. In order for this to work properly, you do have to have the diesel or the electric heat element on. If you were to select this and you did not have the aqua hot on, you will see that it comes up and says select heat source. It's going to tell you, hey, you're trying to operate something that doesn't have a source selected, so we would need to select one of these sources to make that operate. So that pretty much covers the home page. One last thing on here I will show you is when you hit the question mark, you will see that there will be several question marks appear. The question mark is your help screen. Anytime you don't understand what something is for, don't really know what it's doing, if you just touch the question mark, it'll pop up these question marks. If we hit one of the question marks, it will bring up a splash screen and it defines what that is on the page. Kind of a self-help and a self-diagnostic on the page. So speaking of diagnostics, you notice that we've had a chime here and we are getting a warning because these tanks are full. This is our message center right here. It will give you the fault codes and diagnostics. This is going to have an entire list of different things that it will show you and warn you about and give you the warning. And there are going to be some quick tip repairs for these. So if we look at this and just select this here, select right here on the arrow, it should give us a glossary. Well, it should. There we go. So it's going to tell us, hey, your gray tank is 90% full, and then it gives us a remedy. You will also see this here. Any of the messages that can be present is going to be in this menu. So anything that maybe pop up, hey, we're having a battery issue, we're having a tank issue, and let's say, hey, we know that that's full, hey, we're going to empty these in the morning, we're saving that water for in the morning to empty, you can go ahead and turn these off just by simply selecting the speaker that will mute those warnings. So by muting those, that should tell us, hey, this is not going to chime anymore, we won't get the audible chime. It'll still display here in the message center, but it won't give you a chime. If you just wanted to select this, we'll go back out of that page here. Let's say we just wanted to acknowledge, yep, we know. It's going to come up if we hit this little check mark here. Comes up and gives us, yes, I understand the black tank warning message, remind me in. Now we can set this to have that chime come back on in an hour or 12 hours or maybe the next day. Maybe you never want to hear this warning again. You can hit never and then you can back out of it and it will remember that setting. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the home screen. Let's go ahead and move on to our light screen where we can have functions of lighting in the coach. So you have an individual control mode. That's when we have the control mode highlighted. You have individual light sources. Any one of these lights, when you press and release, it will give you this here, which is going to be your dimming feature of that light. So you can dim pretty much every light in the coach, can be dimmed or just taken down to a certain level. turn the light on and off, and it will remember the state that it was in when you turn it back on. If we had this just a little bit lower, 25%, it will remember that state that it was in. So we'll go ahead and turn that back off. Now if we go back to the basic mode here, that's going to pretty much separate the coach out into zones. We can use each zone independently, and it controls all the light in that specific zone. So if we wanted to turn off just the bedroom light, hit the bedroom and it will turn off all the lights in the bedroom. Now if we wanted to just go ahead and dim everything, we can take all the bedroom lights up, and again this will memorize that dim setting. So if we turn this back off and then turn it back on, it'll come back up to what we had it dimmed to. Again, that's that memory put in there. So that is pretty much your lighting control. Move on to our shade controls here. On our shades, we again have the control mode and the basic mode. In the control mode, you have control of each individual shade. We're just going to push one for example here so we get our screen to pop up. This gives you your day shade and your night shade. This gives you the ability to run either one. You will need to select which one you want to run. It'll tell you day or night, and then you run it up or down. Again, just like the master switches, we can run from this screen. We can go to the bathroom. For privacy reasons, shade in the current selection cannot be ran in the up direction for the stool room or bath. So it's going to tell you right on the screen, yes, we can run that shade down, but we cannot run that shade up. That's just for the privacy reasons in those particular areas. In the basic mode of your shades, again, it's going to split it out into each different room, and we can control the room separately, day and night. Again, you get the entire option. Do I want the day or the night? And then you can choose which one you want from there. Unselecting them is going to keep those from operating, and then just goes back to the basic mode here. Moving to our exterior page, this is going to give you the ability to run your exterior lights, your slide outs, and your awnings. So the exterior light page is what it's going to default to, and you have control over each one of these lights. So this is going to be our security light, just an example, on and off. It does give you this here. They are not on a dimmable circuit. The security lights also have a motion feature. Anytime you select motion, that allows those lights to detect motion. It is dusk to dawn, and anytime there's motion outside, those lights will turn on automatically, kind of like a scare light at your house. So we turn the motion off here. Let's go into the slide setting here. Anytime we go into something that's going to move, whether it's the awnings or the slides, we are going to give you a warning just to make sure that you understand, hey, we're getting ready to do something, make sure the exterior is clear, and that you're running these properly. We're not extending them too much or retracting them too much, putting them too much pressure on them. So the slide out operation is going to be a push and hold. You will have to hold this icon, and it will come up and say vanity slide in progress depending on what you're hitting. So press and hold, it will move as long as you're holding that switch. Then you will again need to run that back out. Again, press and hold. On your awnings, it's pretty much the same thing. It's going to give you the warning, make sure all of your things are clear before extending. That gives you ability to do awnings. Now, we have the entry door awning, our patio awnings, and then these little dots are for our window awning. So if we select this, it gives you a window awning extend or retract. The window awnings are pretty much one touch. If we hit the extend button, it's going to go out and start moving without touching it. There is a stop button, so we can stop it in mid-run if we needed to. Let's say we discovered there's a tree or something that's about to hit. We can stop that in mid-run, and then we can retract that back. There is a safety built in so that if you forgot your window awnings were out, and this only applies to the window awnings, if you turn the coach on to release the park brake, it will automatically retract all of those window awnings for you. Not something we want to rely on, but it's just there as a safety. Hey, I forgot to do this one window. It should automatically retract that before you can take off. We'll shift over to the HVAC climate control page. This gives you the ability to operate your climate control in each individual zone, the living room, the kitchen, the bedroom, and the exterior. That's going to be labeled as bay. So the function of this is going to be your cool, your heat, and your auto, and then the off feature. You can run in auto. We'll give you a temperature setting. So if we just go to the auto mode here, we'll go past the heat. We'll come back to all these here in a second. You can set the window here, 7 to 65, and it's going to memorize that window and act accordingly. Now, it's going to default to the heat pump as the heat source. Anytime we're in auto or we select heat, it's going to default to the heat pump first. It's always going to do that because it's thinking that you have 110 power, and it's going to save diesel on the aqua hot. Anytime you don't want that heat pump to operate and it goes to the heat or goes to the aqua hot, you can just unselect that, and now it will only look at the aqua hot to use for a heat source. Now you can notice here, because I have the aqua selected, it is telling me, hey, I need to select a source. So that red outline is telling me you don't currently have anything on the aqua on. You will need to select that. The reason it went to the auto switch over to heat right here is because we don't have this selected and we're not currently in a cool mode. So the compressor wasn't on, it was just running a fan. It wasn't in the cool mode, so it doesn't recognize that. It switched over to the heat. On the climate control page, we're going to talk about the settings here for the living room, kitchen, and bedroom, and the basement. The floor heat we'll get into as well. So these are just the different zones. You have the ability to go from cool to heat to off and then back to auto. So the way it works is from off to auto, then to cool, then to heat. We can just cycle through just so you see each one of those. Goes to heat, off, then the auto, and then back to the cool. So when you're in the auto mode, it gives you the window. If we go back to the auto here, it gives you a window. You set your temperature, and then it stays within that window. It will automatically default to the heat pump rather than the aqua hot. It's going to default to the heat pump first. So that's going to be in any source that we use for heat. It's going to go to the heat pump. If we don't want that to happen, we can unselect heat pump, and then it will only go to the aqua hot. Now notice it does have the red outlines over here where it's telling us, hey, you are selecting the aqua hot to be active, but you haven't selected a source to turn the aqua hot on. Remember that we have to have one of these sources on for the aqua hot to work in that fashion. So you have the same setup on all three of the interior zones. The outside zone is only going to be heat. So that's going to be on the aqua hot. You set your zone temperature, and again, it will ask you if you don't have this selected that you need to have one of those on. All right, we don't really need that on right now. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And then we'll talk about the floor heat. So the floor heat in this coach is radiant floor heat. We are running the propylene glycol through the entire floor. There's 138 feet of PEX tube through the floor that heats this up. So it will take a little bit of time for this to heat up. Once you set this temperature, it is going off of the air temperature. There's a separate thermistor just for the floor heat. That is going to be looking at that air temperature to govern what the floor is doing. You can turn this up and down. Again, if you have this turned on, it's going to ask you to select a heat source if you don't have that selected. All right, so we're just going to get this back to cool here. So it turns off my heat source. I will turn off the floor heat, and that will eventually take these little red lines away. So the other thing that's going to be on here is that was manual mode, and then we also have a schedule mode. So you can set up schedule mode where you have a day schedule and a night schedule. You want it to start at a certain time, and you can tell it specifically, hey, at this time during the day, I want the temperature to be X amount. Maybe you're going to be away from the coach all day, and when you get back, you want it to be a certain temperature. You can set that up as a schedule. So we'll go back to the manual mode here, just so that we have that picture up there. Now we're going to talk about our vent fans. If you press this one time, what it's going to do is just turn that vent fan on. You can probably hear it. It's going to kick on here in the kitchen. That vent fan will come on, it will open, and then it goes to exhaust. But if you press and hold this icon, it will bring up a secondary splash screen where you have complete control of the fan. We can set it up to come on automatically at a set temperature. We can change the direction, we can change the speed, and we can also put it on a timer. So think of that as a sleep timer. Hey, I want this to be on for the next 20 minutes and then go off on its own. Maybe you're just kind of trying to clear some smoke out from cooking or something like that. You can set the timer on 20 minutes, it goes off. That way you're not depleting your air-conditioned air inside. So we're going to go ahead and close that up. Tap this icon one time, you'll hear that fan start coming down, and that fan will turn off on its own once the lid is closed. So moving on to the next screen here is going to be our solar controllers. So there are two solar panels on the roof, one controller that we mentioned down in the basement. That is going to be the house and the chassis batteries. So currently we're inside a building right now, so you can see that there is not a whole lot of solar activity going on. This is really going to be a display setting. We've got our settings preset, default from the factory. We really don't want those changed. That's all going to be based on the number of solar panels we have on the roof, our battery sizes, and our wiring size in the coach. So kind of this is going to be a display only. It does give you history, so we can see when this coach was sitting outside. We can see yesterday's, 2 days ago, and 7 days, how much power we've accumulated over those time periods. So that's just going to give you that little history there. Go back to the home page there. Again, this is really basically just a display for you guys to understand what your solar panels are doing. Moving on to the next screen is going to be our utility screen. So this is where we will have Some different options. As far as utilities, the in-motion satellite is an option, so if that is present in the coach, that's how we would turn that on and off. And then the other items here are going to be something that we can add to the home screen. So we can customize your home screen, and we're going to show you how to do that. Say we wanted to add a light screen, frequently used light, to our home screen, where it's just a quick, I don't have to go to any other page. Just for display purposes, I'm going to use the living room ceiling. I'm going to select Save and Close. There you see that we have the living room ceiling here. So if I want to add particular icons to my home screen where I don't have to navigate to another page, I'm going to select Edit Home, and I want to select the living room ceiling. That's what I want to appear at the bottom of my home screen. When I back out of the Edit Home, it's going to have that now listed on my home screen. We'll have that icon down here. You can program up to 8 icons here across the bottom to customize that home screen to have those quick access buttons. So again, that's all done from your utilities page. If we want to clear that, simply hit the reset button here. It'll reset the home screen. When we go back, that will be empty and we can start over and do whatever we want. So let's move on to our settings page. We're going to have several different options. We'll go across the top here. Display options, this is going to be our display brightness and the sounds that we have, and we can mute them in a certain time frame. So we can mute them for the next 24 hours, we can mute them forever, or we can do it during this time frame. So while you're sleeping, you don't want to hear any alarms. We can set that time so that it will not give you an alarm there. The brightness is going to be controlled here just by this little bubble here, just by running that down, and that will give you your display settings. Get it back up here to 100%. There we go. Now we'll go into our software page. This is going to tell us our current software version that the screen is operating on. This will also give you the ability to check for an update if there were any updates. So we would hit select update or check for update, and it will show us down here on the screen if there is an update available. It'll give you the option to load that update as well. The next screen here is going to be your sleep screen. This gives you the ability to display certain things. So right now we want to set this all the way to 30 minutes for our video. That's going to tell it, hey, I don't want you to go off if it's not touched in 30 minutes. I want the screen to stay on for the next 30 minutes. When it does go into the screensaver mode, you can select what you want to be displayed on the screen. So right now we have the clock, the day and time, and the current temperatures, which would give us all of these temperatures for those zones. You can put it in a sleep time. So from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. or just like our quiet time from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. We don't want anything displayed on that screen. We want it to go completely dark so that there's no backlight to it. That's where you would set the screen here. In the user icon here, this is going to be where you guys will spend probably most of your time. This is going to give us a network, so this is where we will make sure we are connected to the internet. To confirm that you're connected to the internet, these 3 icons right here need to be green. And these will be the instructions of connecting this coach to the internet through the Wi-Fi Ranger. So we'll back out of that screen there. Into the system page, this is going to give us some features that you guys will use probably more often. The feedback page is going to be anything that's operating in the coach. It will show you on the feedback page if you turn the light on, turn the light off. It's going to have a little white dot here showing that that light is currently on, or that circuit is presently on. So that is going to be through several of these. You've got digital input, the DC dimmer module, so that's any light that will dim. The DC load, that's going to be constant things like extend and retracts. The motors, it's going to show what direction they're in. And then your AC load, this is for air conditioners and heat pumps. And then we have our shades as well. It will give you the extend and retract of each one of those shades. Others going to be the components that we have on for the network, the aqua-hot, the vent fan, and the air conditioners are all going to show here. That's just telling us that they are on the network, so we get the source address here on the network showing that they are there. The power page.
Let's pause for the power page.
So we're going to go over the features and functions of the cockpit area around the dash, consoles and everything. We'll go through each one of these items and just talk about what they do. Starting on the driver's side console, you have the tag dump switch that has an auto, an off, and a hold. Really it is the auto mode is what we want it to be selected to primarily most of the time. In auto mode, when you put the coach in reverse, it will automatically dump the tag axle, relieving the pressure so that we're not scuffing those tires. The only time you really need to use the manual mode or the hold button, simply press it one time. It releases the air in the tag axle until you achieve 8 miles an hour, and then it will come back up to standard ride height. The reason we're doing that is for extremely tight turns. If you were going to be doing a U-turn maybe in a parking lot, that would keep you from scuffing up those tag tires. It just releases the pressure off the tag tire so it's not pushed down on the ground with pressure. The next switch over is going to be the window. The power window for the driver's toll window here is powered up and down. That will only operate with the ignition being turned on, so make sure that you have the ignition on to be able to utilize that. Generator start and stop is also over here. That is a manual start and stop for the generator, so you can start it from the driver's seat while you're driving down the road. We will also be able to start it from the center screen here. We'll show you that in a second. The battery boost switch is that isolator manager solenoid we showed earlier at the very beginning in the outside electrical compartment. This is an override switch that will connect your house batteries to your chassis batteries. So in the event maybe we have depleted chassis batteries and it doesn't have quite enough power to start the engine, if we've been sitting here plugged in, we can hit this battery boost. It will link the house batteries to the chassis batteries, giving you that extra voltage to start the coach. Same thing if your chassis batteries are good, the engine will start, but we have depleted house batteries. This will allow us to connect the chassis batteries to that in an effort to start the generator so that we can recharge those house batteries up. The next switch is going to be the dome light. That is for the two lights right here over the driver and passenger seat. So just press that. It's a momentary switch. You press it once, they go off. You press it again, they come back on. You do have a cell phone charger here in this console. Simply just laying your cell phone on top of that will initiate the charging. And then we have the shifter pad, the Allison transmission shifter pad. When we were talking about the engine back there, we talked about the dipstick, and it's more accurate here to use the shifter pad in order to test those features, what the oil level is, what the oil life is, and also the filter life. So to get into that menu, the ignition is on, and it's not going to show anything valid right now because this is not up to operating temperature. The transmission needs to be up to operating temperature for this to work. But simply press and release the plus and minus, so the two arrows at the same time. By doing that, it goes right into the diagnostics. So it's going to give us the oil level. Press it again, it will give us the oil life. When we press it again, it gives us the filter life, and then it'll give us the overall transmission health. If there's an issue here, it's going to tell us, hey, this is starting to get weak, this is starting to go bad, and then we can act accordingly. It will also give you any fault codes. Currently no fault codes, so that's good on a brand new unit. Then we will be able to go into what level we want of the shifter. If we hit this again, we should go back to the normal operating procedures where it just has the double ends while we're sitting in neutral. If we put it in drive, it would have D6 on it. If you put it in reverse, it would just have the R at the top. So that is the shifter pad. Next to that, we're going to have the park brake, and that's just your park brake on and off. Push in to release the park brake, pull out to set the park brake. Right beside the park brake is going to be your headlight switches. So we do have auto headlights, and then you'll have your regular headlight switch, which gives you the marker lights and your headlights. The other switch is going to be your drive lights. So that's going to be those fog lights down at the bottom of the cap. Another thing that's here beside the driver's side console is going to be this USB port. The USB port is important because that is how we are going to initiate software updates to our digital dash screen. So to the center screen here, to this digital dash, there are some options to get some updates to that as well through the USB, as well as the controller that operates all of this center stack and this digital dash feature. That's also going to lead us right into the steering wheel and how the steering wheel operates the digital dash. So there are several different icons on the steering wheel. We have our headlight flash and our marker light flash. That's our courtesy lights for changing lanes. Those are good to use. You see a lot of times the big trucks are doing that. It's great just to let people know, hey, I need to get over, or thanks for letting me over. On this side over here, this pod, you're going to have your cruise control. Press and release the on-off. That will turn the cruise control on. And then your set points or resume. Anytime you need to get to high idle, you would turn on the cruise control, press and release the resume. It'll automatically take it to 1,000 RPM. You can press and hold it, and it will take it even higher. I believe the cap out is somewhere around 1,600 RPM. If we want to cancel the cruise, you can hit cruise cancel or simply press your foot on the brake. That cancels the cruise. So on the side of the pods, there are two small toggle switches on each side. We're going to talk about the left side first. The top toggle switch on here is for your phone, the Bluetooth of your phone, to answer or end a call. So you press it up to answer, press it down to end the call. The bottom switch here is going to be for your engine brake. So you'll see on the digital dash, if we pull this towards us, it turns the engine brake on. If we push it away from us, it changes the level of the engine brake, low, medium, and high. So that is going to be the left pod. If we transition over here to the right side pod, the right side pod is going to have your marker light flash at the top. Then it's going to have your wiper controls here in the center. This does have auto rain sensing wipers, so anytime you turn the ignition on, the wipers are automatically activated in the auto rain sensing function. In order to turn that off, hit the right side button here. That deactivates the auto, or it turns those wipers off. The high-low switch, either going to be low speed or high speed, so that's continuous wipe of the windshield at different speeds. And then in the center is the windshield washer. We always want to make sure that we are not dry wiping this windshield. It is a big, very large windshield, and that is a lot of pressure on that wiper motor if we're dry wiping the windshield. So always make sure that it's at least raining, or that we've sprayed some water or put some cleaner on there before we run those wipers. Down at the bottom of this pod is the air horn. So you'll see that also on the digital dash. By selecting or unselecting, you'll have a green horn that shows up on the right hand side. And then the two toggle switches here on the side of this pod. One is going to be on and off for your radio. That's going to be the bottom one. So if you push it down, turns that on or off. If you pull it up towards you, that will mute your audio. The top one is going to be for your mode and search. So you can go to the different sources, and then we can search different radio channels. That's going to be these two switches here on the side. The center pod here is going to be to control your front gauges. So the graphical instrument cluster here for the dash. The screen view is going to allow you to go to different views. If you hit the screen view once, it goes to your cameras and navigations. Hit it again, and it will bring your cameras up. So all of those sources need to be active while you're using this. The key has to be on for this to work. In order for the navigation to show up, the park brake has to be released. So we're just going to cycle back through to the normal operating. The center section of this here is going to be for your menu down here on your GIC. That is going to allow you to go through and select different menus, getting into your setting page, looking for faults, all of that. So you will find your desired page that you want to do, hit the OK button, and it will allow you to go into those different settings. Anytime you need to get back to the home screen, just hit the home button, and it will automatically take you back to the original home screen on your gauges. This top right button here is the source button. That is controlling the radio. And then the search buttons on the sides, that's going to allow you to change channels, seek and scan for channels on your radio. So now we're going to transition over to the center console interface here, we call the CCI, the center stack of the dash. We'll go through all the different features of this screen. Camera being up top, this is a HD camera system, so press and hold that screen there. It'll give you the different options to change different camera views. There is a pretty cool feature on here where it does have a full screen 360, so we can hit this full screen 360, changes the entire screen into your camera. This is particularly important or good while you're trying to maneuver into a campsite or position your coach in a building. Maybe it will give you a total view all the way around where it's kind of elevated and magnified a little bit. To exit out of this, tap the screen. It'll give you the exit full screen. It will take us back to our default screens where it gives us our displays here as well. So starting at this top left icon, this is going to be your audio controls. You can select the source. We will have the Bluetooth, the radio, USB, Sirius radio, and then you have your settings. On the Sirius radio, you will need to go in and set up that contract and get that service through Sirius radio. Go back to the audio here. It's going to show us we're currently on the radio, FM or AM, and I have it muted right now while we're doing the video, but you can have your buttons here to scan or to seek your next channel, and your presets are up here as well. Moving down to the climate control, this is where you will control the dash AC. Now if the engine was running and we had these turned on, we would be getting cold air and you'd hear the air coming through. We're going to keep that off for now just so that it doesn't interfere with the video and the noises. But the different options on here is the blower motor is this, so you can do several things. We can use this icon here, we can use the slider just by touching, and we also have these controls down here. So these are kind of just in case this screen is not working, or maybe a fast over, I don't have to look at anything. I just reach over and turn this knob to adjust my settings where I need them without touching the screen. Either way is fine. This right here is going to be your recirc button, so it uses inside air instead of outside air. The sync button is going to sync both the driver and the passenger together. So this is a dual zone where the driver and passenger can have separate fan speeds and separate temperature controls. The modes, however, here in the center are going to be locked to the driver and passenger. So whatever mode is on, it's going to be for both the driver and the passenger. Those can't be chosen separately. Max AC is to get max air conditioner. That again is the recirculation. And then your AC button here just to turn on the compressor. Different modes: face and foot, the foot and the defrost, and the defrost. When you go to the defrost, it is going to default to high heat and high fan. That's just how we have it set up, that it automatically goes to the heat and the high fan. That's not something that can be overridden by the passenger controls either. That is strictly done by the driver. So that's your HVAC system here. Down here is going to give us our status of what those fan speeds are. Should we adjust this fan speed, it'll show us down here. And then those fans would come on and we'd start getting air out of these connections here. So this is only going to operate when the key is on. If the key is off, you're going to have a little note here that says ignition must be on to operate this feature. So just remember, if that comes up, it's not an issue. We just need to turn the key on for those to operate. Moving on to our shade control. All of the cockpit shades are controlled by this center command, by the center console interface here. Day and night shades, you can operate all of them from here, and you will need to select each individual shade that you want to operate. So the thing about this is when the ignition is on, we are completely locking out the night shades, so you cannot operate the night shades while the ignition is on. The day shades, however, will operate, and that is simply by going to the day shade, selecting what shade you want, and press and hold the icon. If the key is off, you simply press this once, and the day shade will run to its limit and stop on its own. When the key is on, it is a safety that we have to have you use that momentary, or have you use that constant, so that you have to push and hold that to the desired level, so it's not automatically running down to a specific level. Going on to the control page, this is where you will control your mirrors. So on the mirror control, this is only going to control the top portion of the glass, so you have your arrows here to control what direction you want them to be, and then our defrost. The mirror controls have memory on them, so you can set 1 and 2. Simply get it to the position you want them in, press and hold the memory button. It will set that point as memory for that particular memory 1 or 2. This is also where we will do the tilt, telescope, and the adjustable pedals. So the tilt is your steering wheel, tilting it up and down. Telescoping is bringing it closer to you as the driver or pushing it further away. And then your pedal controls are moving your pedals in and out, closer or further away from the driver. The pedal controls will not operate when the parking brake is released. Again, that's one of those safeties. If you had your foot down that and you ran that pedal slide towards you, it would increase your speed if you didn't adjust your foot at the same time. So we have that locked out anytime the park brake is released. On our GPS system, this is going to take us to the SideJig truck GPS. This is connected to the system through Bluetooth, so we want to make sure this icon is visible up here, that it is showing a blue bar that we are connected. It does have the ability to zoom out, and this guy right here is our menu select, so we can go in and select our menu. By pressing the circle here, that will take us back to our SideJig homepage. That is the menu where we want to go. Anytime we want to go through and go to a different setting, that is going to be the 3 bars here. It takes us to our menu where we can set our vehicle preferences, we can download maps, and then we can go into the internal settings and set things like the speed reminders or how far out you want a notification. You can set the voice, the language, all of that based in this menu setting. The little arrow here is the back arrow, so we can get back to our first screen we're at. That takes us to our map. Anytime you want to set a destination, hit the search icon. It'll bring up all the options that we can do for searching a specific address. We go back just to our standard map. We do have the ability to change this from 2D to 3D. That will give you a visual difference of the map, and then we can back out of this, zoom out a little bit so you can see exactly where we are. And that's going to give you an overview of your GPS. Moving on over here to our leveling system. This will have all aspects of the leveling system to it. So just to start off, we'll go with the jacks. This is the equalizer hydraulic leveling system. That was the control panel that was down in the front fender. That is operated from here as well, so you can do the normal all retract or auto level directly from this screen. You can also manually run these jacks if the need should come up that you need to manually adjust this. just by pushing the arrow, it'll run up and down. Now it won't do this in the extend mode because we have the ignition on, so I cannot physically extend anything because the key is on. I can retract, but I cannot extend them. Same thing with the auto level feature, that will not operate as well because we have the key on. Anytime the ignition is on, we will not deploy those jacks. Only if the key is off can we deploy the jacks. So then let's go across the top here and talk about the auto, the manual, and travel. Those are all part of the valid air leveling system. So in the valid air leveling system, if we wanted to auto level this coach, we would hit the auto button. It'll bring up our screen. We'll go ahead and hit it here. There may not be enough air pressure to achieve auto level, but what it's going to do is set this coach to its automatic level position, and we try to achieve that at its lowest point. So we want to get that front step as close to the ground as possible so that it's easier to step in and out of the coach. So in the auto level process, that comes to the automatic level. Once we're in auto level, there is an auxiliary air pump that every 2 hours, this thing will sense itself and kind of wakes up and says, hey, I'm out of level, I need more air pressure, turns on the auxiliary air pump and airs up the coach accordingly as it needs to self-adjust throughout time. The manual level mode is going to be for us to manually control this. We can raise and lower this. Now, what we don't need to worry about is getting this thing out of kilter or getting it out of whack. Where we twist it, it will come up on the screen and say that there's a twist. Anytime we get it outside of its calibration, it will tell us that there's a twist. However, it is not doing any damage to the coach because it is automatically raising the other side to match it. It will not let you put this coach into a twist on your own by accident. When we're ready to leave or depart, you can simply go to the travel mode here. If the coach is running and we have enough air pressure, that will take us to standard ride height as we were going to be operating, driving down the road. If you got into a situation where, hey, I need a little more ground clearance, we can press the high ride icon here. That will lift the coach up a little bit higher and give you a couple more inches of ground clearance. If we got into a situation where we needed to get into, say we're going into our storage facility and the door is just a couple inches shy of what we really need, if we press that low ride, that'll drop the air out of the coach and you can move the coach while it's in low ride, but you must maintain that the steering wheel is straight. You cannot turn the wheels, and anytime you go over 8 miles an hour, this will automatically go back to ride height on its own. So anytime we're over 8, it's going to go to ride height, and when you're in low ride, please do not turn the steering wheel. You will cause damage to your front fenders. Okay, so we'll move on to our phone settings here. This is going to be our Bluetooth page where when we connect a phone to this, it will give us the option to make our phone calls, give us our contacts. This is all going to be done through Bluetooth, so you will need to connect your phone to that. We'll show you on the back page the pairing screen for that as well. On the light page, this gives us the opportunity to operate the lights from this. So maybe we're driving down the road, we wanted to do the interior master lights, or maybe we turned our exterior lights on so that we're backing up. That's going to be our docking lights over here. Our badge lights are going to be the Entegra badge on the front and the back. Anytime that the ignition is on, those are on, but you know, we like to request that you guys do some free advertising for us while you're at campgrounds. So go ahead and turn those badge lights on, those accent lights on. It is spectacular to see those when it starts to get dark outside. It just kind of lights up and sets our coach apart. The accent light is going to control the sea lights around the headlights and also the side badges. So there's an Entegra Coach badge on the side of the coach that will light up with your accent lights. The docking lights are going to be the exterior lights all the way around across the fenders. 2 on the driver's side, 2 on the passenger side, and 2 in the rear. So if you're getting to a campground late at night, you can turn on your docking lights. Maybe the neighbors might not like it, they're fairly bright, but at least that will give you the ability to see all the way around your coach while you're trying to position the coach into your campsite. On the utilities page, this gives us some limited operation of the VegaTouch system. It's in coordination with Firefly and the VegaTouch system where we can operate certain things. So we can lock and unlock our cargo doors, lock and unlock our entry door. We can run the step slide, which is that step cover here at the entry step while you're driving down the road to support your feet. The auto gen start will allow you to turn the generator into auto mode from this screen, or you can physically just turn it on or off. The temperature control is for the front air conditioner. Anytime you use that temperature control, it automatically turns the VegaTouch system into the auto mode on the front zone, and it will tell the generator, if you're an auto gen start, to automatically start. It is going to try to achieve this temperature, so they are collaborating with the VegaTouch system to achieve that temperature while driving down the road. Last icon here is on our settings page. So this will take us to the settings of the CCI. Most importantly, this reset button. If anything on this screen doesn't seem to come on, maybe the cameras lose signal or you get a black screen up top or something freezes, we can't operate the radio, go to this settings page, hit the reset button. That will restart this entire screen. The QR code here is for product information and also for updates. That's going to be the manual for this entire CCI will be on that landing page, as well as any software updates that we come out with along the way. Maybe we find a little bug here or there or want to update some maps or anything. That will come up on that QR code. Simply scan that QR code. It'll take you to their landing page, which will give you the instructions on how to download that software and install it into the coach. The settings page here is going to be where we can go in and see the system information. So we want to look at this system information just to show you what revision software this is at. This is our CCI software. It will also show us all the different devices on the network. So if we hit network devices, this is also some of the other screens, the passenger touch screen, the GIC up front here, telling you if they're up to date or if they need an update. So that just kind of gives you some background features there. So go back to settings page here. We'll get to the Bluetooth icon. In this Bluetooth icon, this is where it's going to show us what is connected to Bluetooth, and you can manually connect. So the Cobalt Cube, which is currently connected, is the navigation device. We want to see that that is connected while this coach is in motion and driving down the road. If you had your phone paired up here, it would simply have your phone name here, and it would show that it is connected as well. So just giving you an overview of that screen as well. So we're back on the settings page. The QR code again is going to take you to their landing page, and you have some contact information here for us. Anytime you guys have a question, comments, or concerns, or need help with anything, feel free to give us a call. We're always here to help you. All right, guys, that wraps it up. I want to thank you guys for joining me today for the delivery process of an Entegra Coach Cornerstone.